So good morning, good afternoon, and good day to everybody, depending on what time zone you're in. As Vanessa said, my name is Gallo. I'm the product architect for North America for SpinifexIT's, and today I'd like to take you through one of our products called Strato. This webinar was originally designed to be all the new features in 2018, but we decided to take all those new features and bundle them into use cases. And one of the use cases people keep coming out with us is recruiting. So what we're going to do is we're going to spend some time today giving an overview of Strato. Of course, we'll talk about the specific Strato recruiting use cases that we can help with. In doing that, we will talk about a lot of the Strato functionality. I've tried to build this in such a way that we cover all the neat things that Strato can do, of course, in recruiting, and in even some cases outside of recruiting. So you get a full breadth of what the product does. We will, of course, go into a live demonstration. And at the end, we will definitely have some time for questions. That said, how did Strato come about? Some of you on this call, because I've seen the list, you're familiar with SpinifexIT's, some of you are not. Vanessa said we've been in business since 2003, and we had an on-premise document generation solution. It worked on the ECC ERP platform. All of our solutions are SAP specific, but as we all know, we are moving to SuccessFactors, right? People are going to Employee Central, they're implementing the recruiting module, and not necessarily in that order. But as you move to those different cloud-based, we'll call them modules, you still have those same core HR business processes that you have to execute, and some of them revolve around documents. And that's what our on-premise solution did really well. And now we offer one that works in the cloud, because you still have to do those things like you do in recruitment, offer letters. If you're in benefits or payroll, you might be producing compensation statements for employees. If you're in the HR department, you have to output leave notices and things like that. There's a lot of paper, even in this digital world, that still goes around. And what we'd like to have done with Strato is to take those paper-based mechanisms and procedures that you do and automate them and put them into the digital world. And that's what Strato does. And hopefully today, you're going to see how some of that works. What platforms does Strato work with? Before we get into it, that's the first question, right? So Strato is, in essence, it's a cloud-based app to begin with. It's on Amazon Web Services. And what it does is it talks to your Employee Central instance in SuccessFactors. It can also talk to your SuccessFactors Recruiting, which we see today. It also talks in this latest release, for those of you who have not yet migrated to a cloud-based solution, it also talks to SAP ECC. So if you have an on-premise SAP ECC system, it can talk to that. You will see stuff today presented for SuccessFactors, but no, we have other presentation mechanisms as well. And I also mentioned, because there's a lot of confusion with cloud-based things these days, it also works with Employee Central Payroll, which is, of course, SAP's essential payroll platform that is basically an instance of Employee Central, and then you run their Employee Central Payroll product, which is essentially SAP ECC hosted in their cloud that they manage for you. In essence, as long as you have some sort of SAP software, whether it be Employee Central, Recruiting, or on-prem, Strato will work for you. We leverage all this by talking to the different systems through the APIs that SAP makes available to us. And that said, before we get into the recruiting side of it, because we're going to focus on those use cases specifically, there are a lot of things that Strato does. This webinar is designed for recruiting, but as an HR organization, you have many different departments that have many different document needs. And Strato allows you to fulfill those document needs from a variety of different areas. For example, let's just take employee self-service. You might have welcome packets or those total compensation statements you run every year. Employees can go get those documents themselves. You don't have to send them to them. Managers, the same thing. If they have to build termination letters or annual bonus reviews, they can do that right inside of Strato. If your HR service center has to send termination letters, vacation payouts, those types of things, HR can have access to the solution as well. And we'll, of course, focus primarily on the recruiting side today. Because when it comes to recruiting, these are the things that we're going to talk about today. Primarily, we're going to talk about the letter of offer. We're going to use the letter of offer in SuccessFactors as our primary driver to get through most of the functionality that we're going to show in Strato today. When I think of a letter of offer, if you have current SuccessFactors Recruiting, we're talking about the process where this person is interviewed, we've decided to offer them the job, and we need to send them a letter of offer. And there's a variety of different letters of offers I've seen. We'll talk about the mechanisms and procedures that I see companies use today to get those letters of offers to their intended candidates. Also, things like employment contracts, though. Some jobs are not salary based. You're going to work here for 6 to 12 months, and those jobs are out there in your requisition system at times, and you need to produce those contracts. So pretty much any document when it comes to an offer standpoint, whether it's a basic offer letter or some sort of contract, we can generate outside of the system. And there's reasons why we can do things contractually, which I'll talk about to you in a second. Candidate rejection letters. I have a customer that pretty much for everybody, especially an internal candidate that applies, if they get a rejection letter, if they haven't been accepted into the position, you got to send them a rejection letter. Well, we're turning that process now into a button press in these circumstances, because you actually generate more of these than you do offers. I also leave this use case in here. We're not going to focus on this one today, but I leave it in here, especially for the onboarding process. When you onboard somebody, even after the offer areas, or after the offers have been completed and accepted, you have forms that people have to fill out. Well, a lot of these forms can be pre-populated with their data from Employee Central or the recruiting module from their application to get to the employee and get them filling them out quicker and faster, and even pre-populating some of the boxes on there. That's one of the capabilities that Strato offers you. I said we can do regulatory and contractual things because we do integrate with DocuSign and Adobe Sign, and we even go a couple steps further than what the standard SuccessFactors recruiting module does, and I'll explain that to you out there. So you can take these documents, and not just in recruiting, you can actually have them digitally signed in the other modules. For example, Employee Central, if you're just sending out like maybe you had to go through harassment training or something like that, you need to sign that you took the training and whatnot. You can actually build documents for that specific manner too, and have them signed by an employee and stored in their personal record. We will talk about document storage. And then the next question is okay, you can talk to all these systems, but how do my employees get at these documents? Well, the good news is that Strato, at least from an Employee Central standpoint or a SuccessFactors standpoint, is fully integrated into the SuccessFactors platform. What you'll see when I go in there today is we have these custom tiles that are linked right into Strato. The look and feel is exactly the same as you would find inside of any SuccessFactors modular system that someone created out there. It's essentially, we're taking groups of documents that we've exposed through role-based permissions that people are allowed to generate and run, whether they're for their team, for the entire organization if they work in HR, or even just for themselves out there. And essentially, guys and ladies, this is what we're doing, right? It's a glorified mail merge. When people think about a document solution, what does it do? We're taking data, placing placeholders in it in our documents, and we're pressing the button, and it's generating a document for us. And there are some things in SuccessFactors. They do have a document builder that does exactly that. But ours goes a couple steps further, and I hope you'll see some of that today. Of all the key features that Strato does, we're not going to talk about all these things on this slide. The one is the robust formatting. And when you look at this, don't think it as like, oh, we can make things bold, we can put things in italics. It's robust in that it's also conditional out there. People have many different versions of many different documents out there. Let's take the offer letter, for example. You might have an offer letter, and depending on that requisition could offer a relocation package. This other offer could have this job is eligible for bonus, or this job is eligible for stock options, right? Depending on the actual offer and the job requisition, you could have many different paragraphs and clauses and things that you need to include in your offer letter. And I have customers who still do this by hand. They have a giant Word document that has every paragraph in it, and every time they send an offer letter, they cut and paste and format it and get it all in the way that they need to. Or if you're using the standard SuccessFactors offer letter functionality, we had a customer that had 13 different templates in there. And every once in a while, they would pick the wrong template, so the wrong offer would go out. What we do with our documents is we build one document and we make it smart, because we can actually read the requisition, we can read the offer detail, and we can determine which paragraphs and which clauses need to be included in that specific offer. So your recruiter, when they go to send out these things, they're literally generating the letter for the person that they want. All the information is included automatically from the requisition or anything from the candidate profile that you need, and it's formatted with the correct conditions that you applied into the document. And we'll take a good look at that today. But let's talk about the actual offer process. And there are a variety of different ways I've seen the process. Vanessa, I got rumor that the sound is breaking up. Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can still hear you loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
The different processes that you go through with recruitment. Go ahead.
Okay, Vanessa. Sorry about that. Yeah, for those who are experiencing some technical issues, please raise your hand or just message me directly, and I'll give you some tech advice. Thank you.
And of course, if the web service and Vanessa is hearing me clearly, this will be available to watch later. So I apologize for anybody if your internet is a little off or if I sound a little choppy. That said, there's a variety of different ways customers do the offer process. And I put like just 3 here, just some basic ways to talk about how you go through an offer maturity model to get to where you need to go. And you might look at this and say, well, we do it slightly different. I've seen it done a bunch of different ways. So let's just talk about some basic ones and how Strato can help you out. One, offer with verbal. And I've gotten jobs this way, right? Like the recruiter initiates some sort of offer. And what we can do with this is Strato would send the offer document to the candidate right from there. And not only that, we could actually store it directly in SuccessFactors Recruiting automatically. You talk to the recruiter on the phone, maybe the manager verbally. You said you want the job, yup, and the candidate's hired. Show up Monday morning at 8 a.m. We'll start filling out paperwork. Then there's also the process, and this is where a lot of my customers are. They have a basic signature, right? They send out the offer and they need it signed. So with Strato, the recruiter can initiate the process. Strato would send the document to the candidate. The candidate would scan and paper sign that document, and then they would attach it back into recruiting. And then, of course, the candidate is hired. But then, obviously, if you want a fully digital recruiting offer process, this is how Strato would help you out. The recruiter would initiate the process, and then that document would go through some sort of hiring workflow. And we can actually have multiple sets of workflow inside Strato as opposed to SuccessFactors. SuccessFactors does workflow directly to the candidate. We can actually, as long as the fields are available and they're an entity inside SuccessFactors, such as the hiring manager, we can have multiple sets of workflow, and I'll show you that today. For example, you could send out your offer. At first, we go to the hiring manager, and they would sign their portion of the document to say that it's approved, and then it would go to the candidate, and they would sign their portion, and it would be approved, and then that document would get loaded back into Strato, and then, of course, the candidate is hired out there. If you look at levels of maturity model, obviously, or at least in my opinion, having it fully digital with that digital signature is the way to go out there. But even if you didn't do that, Strato can produce and get these documents out in a variety of ways. They can be downloaded, they can be printed. You can run multiple sets of documents and offers, and we're actually going to do that today and zip them up. We talked about we can send them via digital signature, we can send them via an email. There are a variety of different ways that Strato can help you, even if you're in a current process that might not be to that highest level of maturity model. There's probably some features in here that can help you along your recruiting path to save you time and, of course, money. What we will also show today is this. This is probably one of our most requested features, and it's finally done. Strato also supports the translation of documents, and we even have some auto translation features in here that I'll show you about. So if you are a global organization and you have some sort of standard offer letter, but you have different verbiage and different language requirements, for example, if I'm in the United States and I'm generating, but I also do business in French Canada, I need to translate my offer into French or into the language of that person or the language of that candidate. Strato can actually do that for you, and in some cases on the fly. We'll take a look at those different things. We can translate. There's about 14 different languages we can translate into. Obviously, we just listed the key big ones that we see a lot up here. But also know that the UI itself in Strato, from an end user standpoint, actually is translated into English, German, French, and Chinese. So just from a user standpoint, there are some languages that we support to actually use the system as well. And document storage, right? We've talked about digital signature. Some of us who've been on prior demos have seen that in the past, but now we actually offer document storage capabilities with Strato, and I will take you through that today. Briefly from the HR side, because we're here to focus on recruitment, and then we'll look at the storage from the recruitment side as well. So here's what we're going to take a look at, right? What are we actually going to see as we're going to get into that demo? We are going to take an overview of the document generation in Strato, just so you understand how it works from an end user standpoint. I'll even take a look at some basic document storage out there and where it can go from the HR side of the fence. We will review the recruiting in more detail. We'll look at some of that smart document functionality I talked about, how you can filter documents based on fields inside the requisition. We'll generate multiple letters at once, right? I'm a recruiter. I got to send out these 5 offer letters. I can just go click, 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 and send them out. And I'll even do it. I'll translate the data on the fly for you. We will then get into just the digital workflow so people can understand that, because we do offer additional features that SuccessFactors doesn't have when it comes to digital signature. And if we have some time, we will look at reading some payroll data from an on-premise ECC system and including that in Strato. As I mentioned, a lot of people when we do these webinars, they're thinking about going to the cloud, but they haven't gotten there yet. So I'd like to show you some features that you can use right now with the Strato platform. So with that, let's pop up over here. I'm just going to refresh some windows because these things like to time out. on us while I'm in other sessions. And see, this one's already about to expire. Let's come in here. That said, this is my SuccessFactors homepage, right? And as you saw in the prior screenshot, these are the tiles that I have set up that are actually linked to Strato. I will take you through the back end of Strato in just a moment. But I'd like to show you some of the capabilities, just so as I go through some of these things a little quicker as we move through the demo, how Strato actually works. Let's say I'm an HR person and someone is called up, or I have an email that says someone needs a verification of employment statement. What I can do is I can go into my HR documents tile, and through a role-based permission, I could set this thing up to say only the HR person can get to the HR document-specific tile. And this is actually loading up our Strato system right now. It's technically talking to your SuccessFactors system through the APIs. And here I have my SpinifexIT verification of employment letter that we're going to run. I'll just kind of pick it up here, and I'm going to run this for a specific employee out here. I'm not going to pick anything fancy. We'll just pick Mr. Adam right here. In our version coming out very shortly, we actually have mass building. Like I could run this for 10 different people by picking them and finding them. But we do have some selectors where you could pick an entire department and run it for them at that point in time. That would be helpful for like annual merit letters and things like that. You could just run the whole company and store the letter for them. So we're going to run this for this person. We're going to preview it, and we're going to let it run. This does take a few seconds, but what you're going to find is it's going to pop up the document for us. We can then peruse it, make sure that it's okay, and then we have a couple options that are available to us. When you get types of requests in from HR, sometimes you just need to send it directly to the employee, and we can do that right here from Strato. There are email capabilities where you can say, all right, generate me the document, and just send it to this guy. There's also options in here. Let's view the document itself, where we can actually store it to their personal record, and I'll show you that out there. So here's our verification of employment details. What this document is doing is merging in data, such as our text. This document serves as official confirmation of Mr. Adam Nowak. This is getting information from our employee central system. You can see we've included his pay, we've included his benefits information. Not everything you would need in an employment details. You probably just need his hire date and his current pay out there, but we've included some additional information. And then we can do a couple things. We can, one, send it right from here to the candidate. It would read their email address that's stored in SuccessFactors. Or we could store the document in SuccessFactors as well. And for the sake of brevity for this demonstration, I've already done that. That's my recruiting window. Come over here. Here's Adam. We're all familiar with the employee profile, and here it is. These are all the different things about Adam. And for any employee, let's just go down to the bottom because that's where I stuck it. You can actually store documents directly for that employee in their employee profile. So we see I have my verification of employment for Adam I generated earlier. It downloads the document, but it's stored permanently in his profile. You can, of course, delete it from that profile if you so chose and have the permission, but it does store the documents directly into the employee profile, which is kind of nice. But now we have to talk about this other tile. The main reason we're here is to talk about recruiting, right? How can we improve the performance of recruiting and the things that you do on a day-to-day basis? Let's try to explain a requisition, especially for people on the phone who've never seen SuccessFactors Recruiting out there. Here's my requisition. This is a job requisition for an operations manager. For an operations manager for this company, the Best Run USA. This is a SuccessFactors demo system. And there's things about this requisition, the job start date, but more importantly, there's things like this. Let's just keep going down. There's things like base salary. Probably going to have to include that on the offer. There's things like a target bonus amount. Might need to include that in the offer. Is this thing stock eligible? Yes, it is. Does it get reload? Yes, it does. These types of fields that are included in the requisition are the types of information that need to be included in an offer, right? Does this offer relocation? Does this offer a stock package and things of that nature? And the person that we're going to use in our demonstration is this guy. Let's just go over to the candidate. When we run our first set of documents, we're going to look at two individuals. One of them happens to be this person. This is Nitesh. He is in the offer status for this requisition. Nitesh is the person we're going to pull some information on. So I'm going to pull him up, and then I'm going to pop back to another screen. Because what I want to do is I need to generate a document for Nitesh. But where does this document come from? We know in this tile we can run documents. But where do they actually start? Well, they start, of course, in Strato. Strato is our application platform. This application that you're seeing right now is connected to Employee Central and Employee Central Recruiting. And this is where we actually go about building our documents. Strato itself is a full-blown document creation solution. And we're going to get into the templates in a second, but it even gives you neat things like, what are your top documents being run? Obviously, I built this system just for this webinar, so we have things like offer letters being run a bunch, verifications of employment. Looks like I did a little work on this over a period of time. These are all the logins. These are my specific logins. You can get all logins. Looks like they even logged in on Christmas. How nice. But what we really want to do is, how does all this smart documents work, right? You can go into SuccessFactors and use their template builder, and you can create a template, but it's a little clunky. It's not very user-friendly. We like to think ours is special. I said we can build documents for on-premise solutions, Employee Central, and then we have the recruiting, requisition, and applicant side of the fence. This is going to a candidate, so it's going to be on the applicant entity of SuccessFactors. Here is our offer letter that we're going to generate. And before we generate, we should probably understand how this all works. Let's just go into the document. This is a Strato edit mode. This is where you'd actually build a document. So really nice. What you see is what you get with the WYSIWYG editor. And you can see we've included fields into this document. So dear first name, last name, we're pleased to offer you this position, right? And getting fields in there is just as easy as you would do any other mail merge. We can go out here. We don't have last name. There are lots of fields that come with SuccessFactors. I'm a big fan of searching for them. Candidate last name. We can include candidate last name back in. And you can see we put in different paragraphs based on things in our requisition that we might want to offer somebody. Obviously, base salary always needs to be included. But then there's things like target bonus, other allowances, stock options. Do these different paragraphs and text show based on what's in the requisition? Well, this is what makes these documents smart, right? Some people might have 4 different templates, one that has one with basic compensation and annual target. And then you have to have another template that has basic compensation, stock options, and another template that includes reload. Here we can include all of that in one template, and what you'll see is when these are generated, different paragraphs are going to show up depending on who generated them. Because we can filter each different piece of content. Why should we show the annual target bonus? Well, only show the annual target bonus when the target bonus amount is greater than equal to 0. When these documents generate, they read your requisition data on the fly and determine, does this have a value in it, and should we present this? Do we show stock options? Only show stock options when the stock option package equals yes, right? You might have a paragraph on how stock options work out there. And this is neat, right? So we have a nice WYSIWYG builder, full graphic capabilities. We can filter any piece of content that we want. This is an empty section. I'll explain what that means in a second. But before we go generate anything, let's talk about the translations. We mentioned that was a core part of our demonstration today. In this system, we mentioned that there were 14 different languages. We've set this system to only translate up to 3 right now. You can set provisions on which languages you're allowed to translate into. And I've done Portuguese. I've done Portuguese because it seems Brazil has come up a lot with my US customers and doing business there. You can see once I go over to Portuguese, this document is translated into Portuguese out there, right? So we have hello, first name, last name. We have our basic compensation section, which is not translated, which I did on purpose, because I'm going to show you how the translation works. And we can see all these different sections are translated. Well, how does this work? You've seen an English version of this. You've seen a Portuguese version of this. Well, there's a variety of different ways you can get these things to translate. They can be translated by the browser language. They can be picked, the language can be picked at runtime, or you can even pick a field, like the languages someone enters on their hiring application to generate the language in that specific language out there. For the sake of demonstration, this browser is set up to do Brazilian Portuguese out there. What we can do is run our documents. And here's what we're going to do. This document's going to translate on the fly because you're going to see it in Portuguese here. And when we do the digital workflow, you'll see it back in English in our other browser. So I thought this would be neat to show. Because what we can do is we can go in here and not just run a document or an offer letter for one person, but we can actually run it for multiples at a time. So if you're a recruiter and you get up in the morning and you have 5 or 6 different offers you need to send out, maybe it's just 2, which is what I'm going to do now. We can do that on the fly. What these tiles do is they're set up to look at specific statuses. So this is only looking at people in recruiting that I have access to that are in the offer status, hence the O. And I have 2 people that I'm going to generate for, and this will help show the content filtering as well. I'm going to run for Nitesh, and I'm going to run for Andre. Nitesh is in the operations manager requisition. Andre is the project manager, and we're going to generate it. And we'll just run it for today. You can see it is translating into the Portuguese language there. And we're going to let it run. This also takes a few seconds just to generate the document. But what you're going to see is when it brings it up, it'll bring up 2 different documents. We'll see that they're translated. And we'll see our one paragraph that's not translated out there just to show you I was running that document. And I'm going to go in and translate that document for you. And I let you know that I speak no Portuguese at all, but I will still get it translated. These documents, whether they're translated or not, they can still all be sent by email. They could be sent through digital workflow. All the different storage options that you'll see as we go through this webinar are available as well. This is just showcasing the translation portion of it. It should take about 4 more seconds if I guess correctly. Ah, there we go. Your documents have been generated. Let's see. Okay. On the left-hand side here, we have our 2 different documents, one for Nitesh and one for Andre. Look at the content first before we look at the translation. Well, obviously you can see they're translated out there because this browser is set up for Portuguese Brazilian. But notice Nitesh here has his base compensation, his bonus, and his stock options package paragraphs. Andre does not. No stock options paragraph out here. He didn't, in his requisition, the stock options paragraph was set to, the stock options setting was set to no, so it doesn't show it, right? So one document, smart solution, gives you what you want. I mentioned there was that open box out here. When it comes to recruiting, when we first built this, one of the first things people asked was, can I edit this once it's generated? And we said no. What we allow you to do now is you can pick specific areas of the document. It could have been this paragraph. It could just be a blank section that you can edit on the fly. For example, you might not want your recruiters changing the salary. That should maybe be in the offer detail that's pulling from. We don't change it here in the document itself. But we do give you the ability, because recruiting needs to be flexible. Like, let's say you're hiring someone who has 30 years experience in the field. They're not going to start out at your 2 weeks base vacation. You might say you will also get 4 weeks vacation. Obviously, this would probably be said in Portuguese, but you can actually put different provisions on the fly into the document after it's generated. And like I said, you can do that with very specific sections. You can have a blank section, or you can even say they're allowed to change this portion of it as well. But it saves your business process to saying you can only edit what we want you to edit when you're doing recruiting out there. And then there's courses for places for digital signatures for the hiring manager and for the candidate. And that's what I want to talk to you about next. So this is translation. Oh, excuse me. I did promise I would translate something on the fly, right? Back in our edit mode, here's our untranslated paragraph out here. Let's translate this to Portuguese. What we can do is, using our tool, we have an auto translate tool, and we're using Google's free API right now. If you have, you can actually get paid access to Google's language translation API. But what this will do is auto translate this box into this. Now, Google Translate is not perfect. Obviously, if you're going to have somebody translate it, you probably want somebody who speaks Portuguese. This will help you do the base translation, and then you can clean it up as you see fit out there. But making translation changes is pretty straightforward. Or at minimum, you can do the translations yourself, send the document to somebody for correction, and they can just send the corrections back to you, and then you can go in here and update all this. But now that I've done that, this paragraph has now been translated. Let's just kill this right here and leave it alone. So that's document translation, running documents for multiple people. Let's take a look at the digital signature workflow out there. Let's come back over here. As a recruiter, sometimes need a candidate signature, but we have other customers out there that actually require multiple levels of signatures out there. And that's what I want to show you today with our recruiting. Let's just get this up and running, generate it, and then I'll take you into the setup of how this works, because it's all pretty simple. We're doing a very complex process here. As we go and look into the configuration of it, it's actually pretty straightforward. There we go. Mr. Nitesh again. Next, while it's generating, I'll take you someplace else. Generate. All right. In Strato, all those different tiles you saw are technically configured on the back end, and it's pretty straightforward. This is our offer letter that it's generating right now. It's easy enough to sit here and say, what language do you want this thing in? Do you want to take the browser language? Do you want to use the language generation at runtime, or do you want to take from a specific field out there? You can send these things directly via an email if you want to, but you can also set up this document signature workflow. And as long as it's an entity inside your requisition, like a hiring manager or a recruiter, or if you created some sort of custom entity out there, maybe you have another level of approval out there. If that person exists in the requisition, we can actually workflow to them and get them to sign the actual document. This is job requisition operator, which is SuccessFactors term for the hiring manager. And then it's going to go to the candidate out there. And we picked our default provider, which in configuration, I think is Adobe Sign in this case. And we can even store the document back into SuccessFactors, which you'll actually see in a moment. But setting this up is not rocket science, right? We're hitting sliding buttons. We're not typing in XML or any of that fun stuff that sometimes we have to do in template configuration in SuccessFactors. It's all through a nice, pretty UI. When we generate this, looks like it's done generating. Here we go. This is Nitesh again. Here's his base comp, target, and the stock options paragraph. We can actually send this via digital signature, and it's going to go to the job requisition operator and the candidate. And eventually it's going to tell us who those people are. Let's just clean this up a little bit. Offer letter, please sign and return. Just say thanks. Let's do Tessa Walker. She's the recruiter here in the SuccessFactors system that I'm on. So the job rec operator and the candidate are these people. This is where it's going to go. And we obviously set up generic email addresses on our hiring manager and on our candidate out there. But if it was steve@SpinifexIT.com, you'd see it. And if it was bob@gmail.com, you'd see that there if they were the candidate. And we can actually send these things for digital signature. And away they go. They're going to send it for the sake of brevity. I've kind of already done most of this, so we don't sit here on a webinar waiting for email workflows to go through. Essentially what happens is this. You get an email, say I'm the hiring manager. That's who I am right now. Oh, came through pretty quick. If you go in here, where's the second one? Let's do the one that just came in. It should be this one. Click the sign. Nope, that's definitely not the right one. My messages get jumbled. Let's try that one. There we go. Please sign and return. Thanks, Tessa Walker, recruiter. And if we scroll down, we can sign it. I did that quick, but the hiring manager is Maya Cooper. Maya Cooper, the hiring manager, was populated in here. Nitesh Jugal's the candidate. He'll get it next. We can click to sign it. And after all is said and done, it goes to the candidate. It eventually comes back to Strato, or it can actually be viewed. Sometimes that UI has a little hiccup there. There we go. So we can see we have a bunch of different, obviously I've generated this offer a bunch of times. We have a bunch of digitally signed documents. Some are out for signature, some have been signed. Here's our signed completed document out there. Obviously you see this watermark because we're using a test version of Adobe Sign out there. So it stores it back in Strato. And you even, over on the offer letter side, back in recruiting, if you go all the way down to the offer letter portlet, and it's long, it's also stored over here. Right, so we've got full-blown document storage capabilities for your recruitment process. And not only that, you get multiple step workflow, you get smart documents out there. We like to think that although SuccessFactors does have some solution for this, our customers, like many of you, they have complex requirements. And if you have those complex requirements, that's why SpinifexIT is here. We are here to meet them. That said, we did have a little bit of time left. There's one other thing I wanted to show, because I know there's people on this phone out here that are thinking about going to SuccessFactors and are currently on some sort of ECC environment. That said, even if you are in SuccessFactors, you might have Employee Central Payroll or some still on-premise solution out there, and you need to bring that data into your documents. Well, we always had an on-premise document builder, but we've also migrated that data into Strato as well, or at least those capabilities out there. And one of those examples of this would be a total compensation statement. What entails a total compensation statement? Well, back on the on-premise side, this is actually our data source for it. I won't explain how it goes, totally works, but it's from our reporting product out there. But a total compensation statement has things like their name, it might have their salary for the year, but it's also made up of all those components that the employer paid on behalf of the employee, right? You're trying to show that employee what their entire compensation was for the year that you paid for them, perhaps their ER medical costs, any retirement that you've put away for them, such as 401k monies and things like that. And this data needs to be included in a document. Well, with Strato, you can do that as well. Sorry, wrong window, lots of windows open today. With Strato, you can do that as well. I'm just in another system that's hooked up to the ERP side of the fence. You can run full-blown total compensation statements. And actually, I've left it open here to show you that it actually works the same way. Just because you're working on a different module, the UI is exactly the same for building documents. You might have a total compensation statement for 2017, and that might include monies that you want to tell about this person, like their pay, their health and wellness, their financial security, perhaps their pensions and whatnot that you've contributed to them. And it's the same principle, smart sections, right? Some people get a sales commission. Well, if they don't get a sales commission, don't show it. So the sales commission's got to be zero or greater than zero, excuse me, to display this paragraph. Same type of deal. This is also available, obviously, in an ESS, MSS manner, and we can generate these things. We'll just preview this one for the sake of time. But now this is going out live, reading the ERP ECC system as opposed to SuccessFactors Recruiting and pulling that data back in. So we start to see information about the employee, their health and wellness, their financial programs. We even get things like, so this person had a 401k award out there at $5,400. That's what this guy got out of this document. They didn't have sales commission. They didn't have any of that other stuff. So we only showed what we presented to them. And that's the idea behind Strato. We took a deeper dive and looked at some of the functionality of recruiting today, but it also services your other departments as well. Let's slide back from the deck. So a couple things to cover that you've seen today, and some that you haven't. One, how does this thing get installed? Well, it literally takes about 10 minutes to actually get it up and running for us to generate the box for you. Depending on how good your basis team is, I've done this in about anywhere from 10 minutes to 30 minutes. There are some things we have to set up securely in your SuccessFactors environment to get the systems to talk to each other, certificates and whatnot, but standing this up is not complicated at all. You saw definitely those PDF form generation. That is our output. You saw language translation today. We didn't look specifically at sending via email because it's not as cool as doing digital signatures. We looked at the digital signatures options out there. One of our most requested features was allowing people to edit documents on the fly, even after they've been generated. So it kind of sets it apart from some of the additional tools out there and giving you that capability. With that, I'd like to open it back up to Vanessa and see if there's any questions regarding our webinar.
Hi, Stephen. Actually, we have a lot of questions. We have over 10 questions. This is exciting. So the first one is there a plan to also support onboarding in the future?
Yes, there is. So the onboarding APIs are somewhat out there. We're kind of at the whim of SuccessFactors. So what they push available to third-party people or third-party partners, which is what we are, is what we're allowed to read. Like, for example, writing the offer letter back to SuccessFactors is not available long ago. It is available now. So as the APIs come out, we will do that. You asked a question about onboarding, though. If you have specific use case examples that you definitely think this would be valid for, please send that information to info@SpinifexIT.com. When we go out to customers, especially given that this is I won't say it's a new product, it's been around for a year, but it seems like we're adding new stuff to it all the time, and we're doing it based on customer requests, right? We pretty much don't do anything as a company unless a customer or a group of customers ask for it. So if you have some specific requirements you think we can help you with, send us those requirements and we'll give you an honest answer. Yeah, we can definitely do that. No, we can't, but please send us the info or the question to info@SpinifexIT. Next.
Okay, so this is asked 4 times. We currently have SuccessFactors Recruiting, but not Employee Central. Is Strato dependent on Employee Central, or do you need Employee Central for everything to work?
You do not need Employee Central for everything to work. So instead of going into like that homepage where you were before when we had the Employee Central homepage, you would have this dashboard instead, and all those little widgets and things you can actually put down here. So you can, and there's role-based permissions and all sorts of stuff you can put in the main Strato, because Strato is designed to work with Employee Central and the tiling system. It'll work with Recruitment, and you can link it in through here and have your tiles here. And because it also works with on-premise, and in on-premise you don't have any sort of cloud mechanics, but you can still technically add your widgets or document. In fact, we can probably add one. So here's our offer letter with digital signature down here. Let's see if it wants to do what I want it to do. Yeah, so instead of having the tile, if you would in SuccessFactors, you can put the tile in the Strato landing page, which this would be your system. Next question.
Okay, so this is about Strato's document creation function. So the question is, can you build page breaks, either dynamic or hard-coded, and headers or footers into the document for letters that are more than 1 page long? And when you're sending an email, can you add attachments to the offer letter, such as total compensation statements? And can
All right.
total
So
compensation statements, this is a long question, can total compensation statements, like calculations and graphs, um, be also included in that document? Yep.
I'll answer the last question first. The graphing functionality for total comp statements is on our roadmap out there. It's one of the more requested things. So right now, no. It's just textual type data, but the graphing functionality is coming. Secondly, when it comes to the formatting of headers and footers, yes, you can do that. Technically, each different piece of content has a header and a footer. I'd have to see exactly what you're looking at, but based on the question, that seems fine. Vanessa, what was this? There was three parts of that question: the headers and footers. There was a middle part, and then the last one. What was the middle part of it?
Wait, let me quickly check. It has to do with page breaks. Like if we can put page breaks, and if we can do that for documents with multiple pages.
Yeah, there's actually a whole. I'm never gonna get to the edit mode of it, but yes, you can definitely have page breaks. So you could have one page that's set up totally one way, and then you set up another page below it that has its own page set up, its own set of sections, and that nature. So yeah, you can do that.
Okay, I think the middle part that we are pertaining to would be the ability to attach email or ability to add attachments to the email when you are routing it.
That is actually also on the roadmap. It is not part of the piece of current functionality. But if it's one of those, if you really like the product and it's one of those deal breaker things, we obviously move things up and down our pipeline as we see fit for customers, and that's not an overly challenging one to accomplish. So, if you decided that this was something you needed and you needed that, we'd put it in for you pretty quickly. We're a pretty rapid development shop around here.
Great. Okay, and then there's one last question. Can you further explain how Strato can work with ESS or MSS, and therefore data within SAP, not within SuccessFactors? Where would you start Strato if you're using it with ESS or MSS?
That is a good point, a good question out there. So for starters, if you're just talking about Strato and you want to hook it up to your ERP system and you're saying ESS and MSS, know that your employees running this have to have a license, right? So we are calling back to your ESS, or sorry, to your on-premise system with that user name in mind. So they must have credentials for this to work. So essentially, like we said, just like we did with the recruiting letter here, if you didn't have an ECC, an employee central system, there are way too many acronyms these days that sound the same. You would go into Strato and you would have your employee-based document tile out here. All right, so employee documents. This tile would be set up to specifically only read SAP data. There's a connection in the back where you set up Strato to point to your ECC system. And then it works like this. The tile itself works by saying if this is an ESS document, it's only going to run this certificate of employment for the employee, so for the current person logged into Strato. If it's a manager, it's going to run for their team out there, so it reads the authorizations, the chief relationship down there in SAP to determine who they're allowed to run for based on their team. And then from an HR standpoint, it's going to run for anybody that HR person has access to in the ECC system. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, got it. I'm taking note of the questions, and we are going to publish the answers to those questions once we send the on-demand version of this webinar. So yes, to answer another question, we are going to send out a copy of this, a recording of this session. And since you mentioned something about the digital signature workflow a while ago, somebody's asking up to how many levels or how many people can you route a document into? For example, they have 4 levels of approval. Is that possible in Strato?
Technically, I've never hit a limit, but I've never had more than 3. As long as there's an entity, so you might have created a custom object in your recruiting side of the fence, or even in HR, right? You have custom objects and entities through MDF objects that you created out there. As long as they're created through the API, we can technically assign a digital signature footprint to that specific entity. So for example, if I had a hiring manager and then maybe a director level or something like that, if that director was technically included in the requisition and we knew who that person was, then we could send them into the workflow.
Okay, and we have one last question. The question is, can the employee run their own verification letters?
Absolutely, right. So this was my employee tile, employee-based documents. You can take those documents and put them in any tile that you want. So you can have one document. And so verification of employment, ideally that document would be in your ESS side of the fence. So your employee tile, where they could go in here and run it for themselves. Or it would probably also be in the HR tile like it was before, because HR might get requests for people who don't have access to the system. Maybe they need to email them a specific document out there. So yes, employees can definitely run their own documents out there.
Actually, yeah, that's all of the questions that we have for now.
Figures out. The last one I run has a problem.
Okay. I'm just replying to some other questions, and I'm letting them know that yes, this webinar is recorded and we are going to send a copy of this video and the slides and the answers to the questions that were raised during the webinar in a few days. So that's it. If anybody has additional questions after this webinar, please feel free to send it to info@spinifexit.com, and Stephen and I will be answering you as soon as we can. And thank you everyone for attending this webinar. If you have any reactions, if you have any comments about Strato, if you have any particular use cases that you would like us to include in Strato's roadmap, please don't hesitate to let us know, and we'll surely factor that in. So that's it. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Stephen, and thank you very much to our partner Exasur for co-running this webinar with us. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.